Hello everyone, we have arrived at the C++ unit of the course, and I hope you're all as excited as me. It's a very cool language, it's very fast, and you can do a lot with it. And it actually won't be too hard given what you know already because the syntax is very similar to Java. It's just that there's a couple things that Java did for you that you're going to have to do on your own in C++, so it's a slightly more advanced language than Java. But bear with me, and I think you'll enjoy it quite a bit. So I'm running under Windows right now. I'm going to use Cygwin, but as we talked about last week, you can do this on Mac as well just by opening up the terminal. Same thing under Linux. So if you're still having trouble with that, let me know. But I'm going to assume that you have that set up. And what I'll do is I'm going to navigate to my home folder in the Cygwin directory, and I'm going to make a new folder that's going to hold the stuff for today. So I'll call it Module 6. Now when I launch Cygwin, pops up a terminal, and it starts me off in my home folder. The way I can see that is if I say pwd, that's print working directory, it says /home/ctraily. So everything in Cygwin, it's relative to the directory Cygwin64 here. It'll look slightly different if you're on Mac. If I type ls, it shows me all the things that are in this directory. So I just made this folder Module 6, so let me change into that folder. So I'll say cd change directory, Module 6. Awesome. Okay, now there's nothing in that directory yet. I just made it. But let's go ahead and make our first C++ file. So what I'll do is I'll navigate to this folder, Module 6, and I'll say File, New File. It'll make something. If I go to save it, the extension for a C++ file is .cpp. So I'll call this program simpleprint.cpp because that's what we're going to do. Okay. Now it's a blank file, but let's write something. One thing about this is a little different from Java is you don't actually need a class to have a main. So you can just straight up write a main. So I can say int main. And here's another thing. The return type of main is no longer void, it's actually int. And the convention is if everything went okay, then you return 0. So this is pretty boilerplate. You're going to write int main, and whenever you're done with whatever you're doing in there, you're going to return 0. If something went wrong, you return other numbers. So that's the convention. Okay, now let me compile this program and see what it does. Well, it shouldn't do anything really, but let's see the compilation process. So if I write g++ simpleprint.cpp, it did something. It didn't give that fatal error anymore. Okay, and in particular, it output a file called a.exe. On Mac, it should be a.out or something similar. And this is what we call the executable file for the code we just wrote. So we've compiled it into so-called machine language that's going to run on the processor. So to run it, what you say is /, that means this directory, A. So it's called A right now. And nothing happened because the program doesn't do anything. Okay, but let me show you how to print something. So we're going to do our classic program that prints hello world, right? So in C++, there's a few ways to print things. Let me show you one that's the most like what you've seen so far. So we actually have to import something. Imports in C++ are a little bit different from those in Java. To import, you say hashtag, or the #, include, and then in these angle brackets, the name of the library. So in this case, I'm going to use the standard input-output library, stdio.h. .h, it means a header file. We'll talk about that more a little later. But this is just the way that you include the standard library for input and output. Okay, that's it. Now it's not system.out.print. Now there's a function here, or a method here called printf. So I could say printf hello world. All right, let's try this again. And let's see what it does. So there's the code up there. If I hit up my up arrow key twice, I get back to the G++ simple print. And now let's try running it. Hey, look at that. We got a hello world. Now, of course, maybe I want to add a /n so it doesn't go straight back to the terminal there. So let me do that. Actually, let me do 2 for good measure. 2 line breaks. And there we go. Cool. Now, this is a bit strange that it always calls it A. So I just want to note real quick that there's another parameter that you can pass to the command line G++. You can say -o and then give it a name. And now when I do it, it's going to output that name. So now see it has simpleprint.exe. So that's how you compile to a particular name. And this is better to do because you want to know what you're actually running. So you should get in the habit of G++, the name of the file you're trying to compile, -o, and then the name of the executable that you're going to run. Okay, let's see what happens if I mess something up. So what if I try to call this print instead of printf? So remember, I always have to compile first. Well, now it's going to complain. It says error print on line 4, column 5. Print was not declared in the scope. Did you mean printf? So they've actually got some pretty good hints now. So probably wanted to put printf. Okay, so far so good, right? All right, well, let me now show you some other things that are going to seem pretty familiar. You can also make methods just the same way. These methods are going to have a global scope because they don't belong to a particular class. We haven't done classes yet. We'll do them more next week. This week, we're just going to, it's kind of like back to week 1 with Java in this course. We're going to do a bunch of methods. Okay. So let's make a method that prints out all the even numbers from 0 to some specified number. Okay. So I'll call this void print evens. And it takes one parameter, which will be n. So I'll just put in comments here. Same conventions as Java. I'll say print out all the even numbers from 0 to n, inclusive. And it has one parameter, which is the upper limit to check. Okay. Nice. We have our first method. Same exact syntax as Java, actually. We're not going to return anything. We're just going to print things here. And we're going to loop from 0 to n inclusive. So guess what? The loop syntax is exactly the same as well. So I can say for int I equals 0, I is less than or equal to n, because we want to go up to n, including n, I++. And just to show you another thing, of course I could have said, since I'm only printing the evens, I could have just said I plus equals 2. But let me go through all of them just so I can also show you an if statement. So what I'll say is if I modulus 2 is 0, then I'll print it. Printf. Now here's one more little thing. Actually, it turns out if I'm printing an integer, I have to do something a little fancier. I have to printf %i and then I. This is called the format string here. What it says is this is going to be a placeholder for an integer. That's what the %i means. Everything else we print as normal. So this is going to print the integer and then a space. And then it'll substitute in that integer there. Okay, so that's it. If the modulus divided by 2 is 0, so if there's no remainder, 1 divided by 2, we'll print it out. And then we call this just as we always do. So I'll say print evens 100. Now this should print 0, 2, 4, 6, all the way up to 100 with spaces in between them. Okay, so let me compile that. And now if I run it, there we are. So there are the even numbers up to 100. Very exciting stuff. All right, but we gotta start somewhere. Okay. Now there's just one more little thing I want to show you. which won't be in the module exercise you're doing in a moment, but I want you to be aware of it. So remember in Java we had this thing. The main looked like public static void main string args, right? And what we noticed last week was this is actually an array of command line parameters, so things that we type after our program in the command line. We could do a similar thing in Java. So I haven't really introduced arrays yet. We'll talk about that in the next video. But just real quick, I'm going to show you how to do a command line argument. And we'll talk about it a little more in the next part. I should write the syntax a little bit differently. These are both okay. But actually, so it turns out the way it works in C++ is the first command line argument is always the name of the program. So if I want to specify as a command line argument the number of even, or the number range I want to check up to for the even numbers, I actually need to look at index 1, not index 0. So arrays are indexed starting at 0 just like there are in C++. So what I can say is int n is equal to a2i argv1. What the heck did I just do? Well, first let's just see if it works, and then I'll explain it. So what I'm trying to do is not hard code in a magic number. Oh, I think I also need to now include stdlib.h. There's another library I need for this a2i thing. There we go. Okay, so now let's just test. If I say simple print 10, see now it only printed up the even numbers up to 10. If I say simple print 50, it goes up to 50. So what I'm showing is this is how you get a command line argument. And so what's happening is, actually one way to represent strings in C++ is as an array of characters. We'll talk about this more in the next thing, but what we're doing is just pulling out. This is now an array of an array of characters, just like this is an array of strings, and we're taking out the one at index 1, which is the number we want. Okay, I just wanted to show you could do that. But I'm going to have you just do one simple exercise and live in the browser here, just making sure that you can write a method in C++ and print things out that are integers. Okay, so that's what you're going to do now.